Hey guys, so today's video is another request. This is from Russell Cook. Thank you for the request, Russell. He requested 2 videos, and his next request may be the next true crime. Depends on if I can get a police report or if I have to do the research online. This is one I wasn't able to get the police report for because it was purged because it was so old. So I have done a ton of research online and linked all my sources below as usual. So today's story is about an American serial killer slash spree killer slash family annihilator by the name of Herbert Mullin. Mullin was born in 1947, so he is currently 72 years of age. He is in prison, and I will go over the details of that as well. He was born in Salinas, California, and he committed 13 murders between late 1972 and early 1973. He was charged with 8 counts of second-degree murder and 2 counts of first-degree murder, and he was sentenced to life in prison. Mullin is a schizophrenic, and a lot of his killings were based off of paranoid delusions, which I will get into, and he is quoted to have said, "We human beings through the history of the world have prevented our continent from cataclysms by murder." In other words, a minor natural disaster avoids a major natural disaster. Basically, that is to say that he believed that his killings saved the earth from major natural disasters, most famously from earthquakes. And again, I'll get into that a little later. His father was a World War II veteran who was strict, though not abusive. He taught Herbert how to use a gun and told him war stories growing up. The family later moved to Felton in Santa Cruz County, where Herbert attended high school. He was popular, he played varsity football, and he was even voted most likely to succeed. After graduating high school in 1965, he went to college to study engineering and considered joining the military like his father before him. Now, there was a major turning point in Herbert's life when his best friend Dean Richardson was killed in a car accident. His behavior apparently changed completely, and he started building shrines dedicated to his late best friend, spending several hours alone with them and becoming obsessed with the idea of reincarnation. He later came to believe that his friend's death was due to some larger plan in the universe. In 1968, he broke up with his girlfriend after voicing his own suspicions that he may be gay. The following year, he allowed his family to commit him into a psychiatric hospital, but he left shortly afterward. He spent the next few years doing odd jobs and checking in and out of mental institutions. Apparently, he was a boxer for a short time, but he was forced to retire when he refused to quit hitting his opponents when they were down. He also experimented a lot with yoga, meditation, and certain drugs, including LSD. So he was very inside his own mind, and the drugs most likely exacerbated these paranoid delusions that he developed from his schizophrenia. He tried joining the Marines and the Coast Guard. He passed the physical and psychiatric exam for the Marines, but because of his arrest records and previous behavioral issues, they denied him. The Coast Guard, he did not pass the psychiatric exam. Now, over time, his schizophrenic delusions began to grow. He started hearing voices that were telling him to kill. In October of 1972, he finally listened to these voices. He bludgeoned a hitchhiking homeless man by the name of Lawrence White to death with a baseball bat. Then, less than 2 weeks later, he picked up a hitchhiking woman by the name of Mary Guilfoyle, and he killed her inside of his car, dumping her body in the woods by the roadside. He then dissected her and hanged her intestines by the tree branches and examined them for pollution. Her remains were unfound for several months, and when they were found, police believed that it was in connection with the serial killer Ed Kemper. 4 days after this killing, Mullin went to St. Mary's Catholic Church and made a confession to a priest by the name of Father Henry Tomei. Thinking that he offered himself as a sacrifice, Mullin then stabbed the priest to death and fled the scene. After being rejected by the Marines and quitting drugs, his delusions became even worse. He decided to kill Jim Gianera, whom he used to know from high school and bought pot from, because he felt that because Jim had sold him drugs as a teenager, he was the reason for his mind feeling and being so twisted, and he was to blame for how troubled his life had become. On January 25th of 1973, he went to the last address that he knew Gianera had lived at. Now, Gianera no longer lived at this address, so the current resident Kathy Francis and her 2 sons were there. She provided Mullin with Gianera's new address, and during the night, Mullin went to Gianera's home and killed him and his wife. Then at some point during the night, he went back to the original address and killed Francis and her 2 sons. It's unknown what order these murders happened in, but he did murder all of those people. Now, because both Jim Gianera and Kathy Francis's husband were drug dealers, police originally thought that this was drug related, so Mullin was not considered a suspect in these crimes at the beginning. Less than 2 weeks after these murders, Mullin saw 4 teenage boys camping in a state park, and he approached them, posing as a park ranger. He told them to leave, claiming that they were polluting the forest. When they dismissed him, he pulled out a gun and shot them one by one, later stating that he had asked them all telepathically if he could kill them, and that they had all telepathically given him their permission. A week later, on February 13th, he used a rifle taken from the campsite to shoot and kill a man named Fred Perez. When a witness called for help, Mullin was arrested and originally didn't put up any sort of resistance to this arrest. However, at the police station, Mullin became completely uncooperative, shouting silence to every single question that was asked of him. When Ed Kemper was arrested, he and Mullin were actually briefly held in adjoining cells. Now, Mullin was charged with 6 counts of murder when the evidence was found in his apartment. 4 more counts, those of the campers, were added when their bodies were discovered on February 17th, and he soon confessed to the first 3 murders, although he was not charged for them. Now, the biggest issue with Mullin and his trial was whether or not he could pull off an insanity plea. It was argued that the murders of the Gianeras and the Francises were premeditated, and as you may or may not know, if it's a premeditated crime, it is not typically eligible for an insanity plea. Now, in the end, Mullins was charged with 8 counts of second-degree murder, meaning they were not planned in advance and he had not premeditated them, and 2 counts of first-degree murder, those of Kathy Francis and Jim Gianera, and he was sentenced to life in prison. He is currently serving his sentence at the Mule Creek State Prison in California, and he will not be eligible for parole until 2021, when he will be 74 years old. Again, some ties to Kemper. He is noted to have had some interactions with Ed Kemper. Supposedly, Kemper performed behavior modification treatments on Mullin by giving him peanuts whenever Mullin was good. And apparently sometimes Mullin would bother other prisoners by singing, so Kemper would splash water on him. Now, as for the delusions, Mullin had a fixation with earthquakes, and he believed that his birthday, April 18th, had some significance because of the anniversary of the 1906 San Francisco earthquake, and also the anniversary of the death. On the witness stand, he asserted that he had been chosen as the designated leader of his generation. He believed that many killings in North Vietnam during the Vietnam War had acted as kind of sacrifices and prevented earthquakes, and that his own killings had the same effect in California. Now, in 2006, Mullin went to the board requesting an early release for parole, stating that he wanted to live in Boulder Creek and find a wife. He apparently had thought about auditing a psychology course at UC Santa Cruz, and he says he would be a hard-working, law-abiding citizen. However, the California Board of Prison Terms refused to release the convicted serial killer, saying that he should stay behind bars for at least another 5 years, the maximum allowed between hearings. At the hearing, he stated, "The people I am accused of killing, I did kill, but I am not guilty by reason of insanity. I'm extremely remorseful and sorrowful for my part in committing this crime. I pray for the souls of the victims every day." However, a prosecutor at the hearing stated that Mullin's disregard for human suffering was astonishing. He said he didn't care how well Mullin behaved in prison, and that he spent 32 years in prison and hasn't begun to pay his debt to society, not only for the 13 people he killed, but also for the families. His parole was denied due to the cruel and callous nature of his murders. The commissioner over this board stated to Mullin, "You are not the victim here. The victims and their families are the victims. You are the individual that made them victims." So still to this day, Mullin is in prison, and he is awaiting parole in 2021. So it is coming up, and we will see what happens there. that's all I have for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you like this video, please hit the thumbs up below. If you want to see more, please subscribe. I upload new videos every Wednesday. If you have any requests for videos, true crime or otherwise, please comment those below. And other than that, I will see you guys next week. Bye.